It is a weekly pulse on all things green and gold. The first team to shut out another team this NFL season with the three-time Wisconsin Sportswriter there, Jason Wilde. I'm Alex Strouf. It is Weekly Wilde here on ESPN Wisconsin. Let's start there. And Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, all that good stuff, which we did off camera for a moment. That was impressive regardless of who the opponent was on Monday night. 34-0. You shut out an NFL team. I understand it was kind of a JV version of an NFL team. Regardless, I'm impressed by the defense putting together back-to-back performances that are dominant, it seems, against Seattle and now on Monday night. So I'm curious your takeaways. I'm really impressed. I'm bought in, even though it was a JV version of an NFL team. And I see the grin you're giving me, which makes me think you're going to go, well, wait a minute. It was just the Saints.
No, I agree with you.
Nice.
I do. Look, you can nitpick if you want about the Seattle game and the subsequent New Orleans game. Fine. I think the coaches are too, right? They're not just saying, hey, we're the 85 Bears. No more room for improvement. We got this. So you can make those comments, and we will during the course of our conversation, but it doesn't change the fact that that's really impressive. I mean, do you want to debate whether the Ravens were more impressive on Christmas Day with a 31-2 shutout since the Texans offense did not score? Yeah, fine. The Texans are going to have won their division. The Saints are not winning theirs. But the bottom line is, and to me, this is the most important thing. This was my going into the game day story, is that this defense is coming together in spite of missing some pieces, by the way. Mm-hmm. But this is a defense that, I think we talked about it last week. I was wrong to assume that the switch from Joe Barry and his 3-4 complicated, lots of rules, guys getting confused, not being aggressive, read and react, and switching to a 4-3, more simpler approach, the illusion of complexity, more aggressive, less read and react, more get up the field. I was wrong to assume that would be, maybe not, but right, pretty darn close to that, right? I mean, I thought by mid-season they'd really be humming, and we talked about I went back and forth with Jeff Hafley about the Bears game, and eventually he got to the point where he called us a bunch of Debbie Downers. But I think if he looks back on that now, and he did leading into the Saints game, they were in the right places. They didn't do what they were supposed to do once they got there. Now, since then, they're getting to the right spots, and then they're doing what they're supposed to do. And frankly, they did it against the Lions, too. The Lions are just really freaking good. So I feel great if I'm a Packers fan about where this defense is at, about where it can go. They got 2 more takeaways. The takeaway, torrential takeaways had slowed to a trickle. So they got 2 more of those. Almost had a third on the Hail Mary. Like, I think you should feel really good about them, but it all comes down to this but. What are they going to do on Sunday in Minneapolis against an offense that's clicking too, against 2 really, 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 really good wide receivers, a quarterback that's playing terrific, and a group that is playing at home, which is an advantage for them. So, I'm not saying we can't be excited if you're a Packers fan about where the defense is. I'm just saying another test looms on Sunday.
Yeah, I feel like this will now be the 4th or 5th time we've said that this season, which is this is the biggest game of the year coming up Sunday in Minnesota for Green Bay. Now, with some of the results already in Week 17, which started yesterday, and there's another game tonight, the Packers are down to the 3 wild card seeds. They can't win the division anymore. They can be the 5 seed, the 6 seed, or the 7 seed. In order to get the 5 seed, they need Minnesota to lose out. Now, lucky for them, 50% of that rides on their shoulders as they head to Minnesota this weekend. And then in Week 18, debatably the biggest game of the year remaining in the NFL is Vikings-Lions week 18, and that could be for the division depending on what happens this weekend with both Minnesota and Detroit. They both lose, that's going to be for the division. They both win, that's going to be for the division, as they have the same records as it stands right now. So back to the Packers and Vikings, though. This is a team that has now won 2 in a row. They have won 5 of 6. They have scored 30 points in each of their last 5 games. So not only does the defense seem to have figured it out to some capacity, it seems the offense also has, as I believe this is the longest streak in franchise history of 30-point games in a row, if I'm not mistaken, Jason.
I think maybe in the Super Bowl era, but I'll have to double check that and get back to you.
Gotcha. I know Domovsky mentioned something to us on Green Bay Game Day about it on Monday. So maybe we'll have to ask him.
When in doubt, ask Rob. because Rob has the strength of ESPN stats and information. Don't let him fool you into thinking he's looking all this stuff up himself.
No, the Jason Wilde stats and info department, unfortunately, a little bit thinner than ESPN's. But nonetheless, it's impressive all around. Right? Even with the loss in there to the Lions, 30 points on offense is going to win you a lot of football games in the NFL. And the way the defense is playing, it feels like that's going to win you a lot of games in the NFL. So I've asked you this 100 times this year. I know you feel like this team is still 1 year away from hitting its true peak. But the way this team has played the last few weeks, it almost feels like 2010-esque to me in the way, Jason, where it's like, yeah, they're probably 1 year away from being the best they can be, but they're playing hot football at the right time. Anything can happen. It's now feeling like that to me, maybe more so than, yeah, they're the clear favorite.
Yeah, look, they can go into Minnesota and win. I would assume they'll beat the Bears. I mean, even if they were to rest guys, I would hope they'd still beat the Bears, right? So now you're looking at a team that finishes 13-4, is going on the road. Can they beat the Rams in a game? Absolutely. Even with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua available. And Tyler Higbee now is back as well. Can they beat the Lions in Detroit? Yeah. Probably should have, frankly, had they gotten going offensively a little bit earlier in that game. Can they beat Minnesota in Minnesota even if they lose to them on Sunday? Yes, I think so. Can they go to Philly and win? I think that's difficult, but I wouldn't say that that's impossible. Can they go to whatever team they play first, say LA or Tampa, whatever, and then beat them, and then go beat Philadelphia, and then go beat Minnesota or Detroit? I don't think so. I don't think it's impossible. I don't think I would say there's a 0% chance, but doing that 3 games in a row is really freaking hard. So I think there's reason to be excited. I think there's reason to be, I mean, look, they played, how many times do we hear about complimentary football, right? Everybody loves to say it. Aaron Rodgers loves to talk about it with the Jets. They just never do it. The Packers did it. Their defense was fantastic, pitched a shutout. Their offense, they ran the ball effectively. I would say their passing game wasn't great, but it was sufficient. And their special teams, the only kickoff they got to return was a good return by Nixon. And while the 2 young kickers that were at least one of them, were employed by another team that had been through Green Bay, is Anders still the Jets kicker?
I believe they will be moving on, but I think technically he is still on the roster.
So, and Narveson got cut again by the Titans. Those guys both missed kicks for their teams on Sunday. McManus made every kick he attempted, including a 55-yard field goal. So offense, defense, special teams, all playing really well at the same time. I don't care if you're playing Denmark High School. That's hard to do. So they deserve credit, but can they replicate that against better teams? That's what will decide how deep they go in the playoffs. But I think it goes back to our conversation in the Summerfest trailer. Unlike the previous year where you left so dejected you didn't even finish your Major Goolsby's major cheeseburger, I think they're a better team without question this year, but they may not get as far in the playoffs, or they may get the same distance in the playoffs as they did last year, even though they're better. That's the drawback to the challenges that they have in front of them.
Oh yeah, look, being the final four in your conference alive is not an easy task, right? There's 16 teams in the conference. Being one of the 25% remaining is not easy. So I've always
Did you get
understood.
that stat from Domofsky?
No, believe it or not, I actually did math in my head correctly for once. Now, so I've always understood your point on that, but it just feels like, and I know it's our job to project and look and evaluate and analyze, but I'm to the point now after the Saints game where it's just like, yeah, I think they're better. I think they could do everything you just talked about. Of course, it's a tall task, but I'm kind of at wait and see territory. I think Sunday's game will be the final measuring stick game, if you will, prior to the postseason, where we go, okay, are they a better team than they were in October when they played this team? Are they continuing to get off to fast starts while playing better defenses like they have the last 2 weeks against Seattle and New Orleans? Everything we've seen from them the last few weeks to me has been encouraging. And you outlined the one big disappointment I had in that last 5 weeks, and that is the slow start in Detroit. But that's something it seems like, and I get it. Seattle and New Orleans are not Detroit, even though Detroit's beat up. But the fast starts seem to be kind of a trend the last 2 weeks. They're getting out and scoring and using Josh Jacobs early and putting their foot on the gas, to use the old Matt LaFleurism. So Sunday's big, and for sure I think they're going to have more struggles than they have the last 2 weeks. But I feel as if the way they are playing, both offensively and defensively right now, this is very, very much a winnable game Sunday in Minnesota.
Yeah, there's no doubt it's a winnable game, right? How is it a must-win game?
Probably not anymore, but
No.
maybe if you want that 5 seed, I don't know.
No, I mean, look, would you rather, from what I can tell, would you rather play Atlanta or Tampa than play the Rams?
Yes.
Yeah, I think so. So yeah, getting the 5 seed would be great. But again, if they do, great. If not, the road is hard no matter what. And so, look, if I'm a Packers fan and this game comes down to, a game-winning field goal and McManus misses from 57 and you lose 34-33, I'm shrugging. And I'm going, if we got to come back here, we're going to beat these guys. We figured out their defense. Jordan is healthy. We got out of this game without losing anybody else. Because that's the other thing here. Like, they're going to be without Evan Williams. My great question to Matt LaFleur at the end of the press conference on Monday night, when I could barely speak, it was, he gave, I don't know if he took pity on me or what. A little under the weather there, Jason. But he gave a pretty clear answer. Like, very rarely does he say something to the effect that he said then, which was, we hope we get him back for the playoffs. You basically ruled him out of the next 2 games. So that usually doesn't happen. So now you're without Evan Williams. You don't know what the timeline is on Quay Walker. Only God knows what's going on with Jair Alexander, right? But offensively, you dodged the bullet with Christian Watson's knee. Now, does he practice today? I guess we'll wait and see. But if he's able to go, great. If not, if he has to miss one game in Minneapolis so he can play in the playoffs and play against the Bears, fine. They got enough depth. Bo Melton, you go run the fly routes. It'll be fine. But my point is that they are in maybe not as great of health as they were like in 2014 when they should have gone to the Super Bowl. But that's another factor here. We certainly know these other teams that are not in that good of health. The problem is the Vikings are trending toward being in really good health too. So again, I don't think this is the end-all be-all game, but for those of us that are trying to figure out, are they good enough, this is going to be a piece of evidence one way or the other that we're going to look at.
Yeah, so you had a great soliloquy, I'll call it. I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago on that, right? Is this team good enough? I'm not really completely sure. Since then, they have wins over Seattle and New Orleans, which again, likely not playoff teams. So do you feel any better about what you said a couple weeks ago in regards to that question, right? How good really are they? Or do you feel like Sunday is ultimately the only measuring stick the remainder of the regular season that will matter that much?
Yeah, and look, let me be clear. You can say the same thing about the Vikings.
Oh yeah, you can. Absolutely.
I mean, they've played essentially the same schedule. They played the Jets instead of the Dolphins, maybe.
Correct.
And they played the Giants instead of the Eagles. Um, so I think both the teams are good. I think they're very good potentially. Are they Super Bowl good? I'm not sure either one of them is. Then again, I'm not sure Detroit at this point is. So I don't have any question that they're good to very good. Are they good enough to get to New Orleans? I don't know. But I feel a lot more like they are now than I did when I said that after the Lions game. And I felt pretty good about them after the Lions game. Like, I wasn't in Detroit, so I didn't get the in-person feel of the vibe of the locker room. But certainly I saw the quotes coming out of there, and they sounded like that 2010 team after Atlanta. And unlike Atlanta, which still had all of its guys, Detroit's in trouble injury-wise. So again, to me, if there's anything that frustrates me about fans, it's not the wave in the fourth quarter of a 27-0 game.
Let it be known I didn't participate. I was there. I didn't participate.
Thank you for your lack of service.
You're welcome.
And look, I totally get Matt's point. Totally understand. I mean, it's not in a critical moment of a 3-point game.
Oh yeah, that's ridiculous.
I mean, just take a deep breath.
Yes, correct.
But
what frustrates you about fans?
What frustrates me about fans, I was getting there, is that I don't think everyone understands just how hard it is to get to the Super Bowl. Like, you can be the better team and still lose. And Lord knows the Packers have been that. And that's frustrating. But 2010 was 15 seasons ago now. It's a long time. And so you would have liked for them to get back sooner. I get it. But you can have the best team and one injury can be the difference, right? One play can be the difference. God knows one out of 12 plays in Seattle was the difference, right? And so, right, and it could go the other way too. You could end up beating Philly and going to the Super Bowl and playing Patrick Mahomes because one play that wasn't supposed to go your way went your way. You convert a 4th and 26, right? So all I'm saying, and this is not specific to Packers fans, it's just, I just feel like there's always this kind of feeling of, well, they should have done it. Mm-hmm. Well, it's hard. It's really hard. And you need so many things to break your way. And if one of them doesn't, that can be all it takes. So we'll see. But I really like where this team is at. I don't think there's no reason to look at this team and go, oh, they're definitely not good enough to get there. That is out the window at this point. They could lose. I mean, if they lose by 2 touchdowns on Sunday, that would give me pause. But even then, I would chalk that up to, well, short week, they didn't play well. They just didn't play well. So again, I'm not here to put on the Swami cap and predict the future, but they are definitely capable of getting to New Orleans. Will they? I don't think so, but that doesn't mean that I don't think they're capable.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. They're probably still a year away, but hey, anything can happen. You play the games for a reason, and the margin of error in the NFL is absolutely as thin as it comes. So we will see. Big one on Sunday, but I want to ask you about a couple guys on Green Bay who have stood out, and probably the same guys I ask you about every week. But
Zane Anderson.
No, actually not one of the guys on my list. But if you want to talk Zane Anderson, I mean, he did start on Monday night.
He's going to start again too. I mean, they're going to have to start.
You're right. Yeah.
So, and he's a really good story of a guy who had played 8 career NFL regular season defensive snaps in 4 years, has a Super Bowl ring, but played against the Lions and then went in and started on Monday night and played really well. They need him. He's a big piece.
He was a guy Packers fans didn't even think was real last year because he was a healthy scratch so often early on in the regular season, and people were like,
he wasn't healthy. They picked him up. He had a hamstring injury. So, but they picked him up at the end of camp. Like he was If you had to be a hardcore Packers fan to know who the hell he was. And the first time I talked to him was purely because I was wearing a BYU sweatshirt and he went there and he asked me if I went there. Which if you listen to Halfley last week, I was wearing an SMU basketball hoodie and Halfley's like, "Is that SMU?" Like, yeah. And I'd really worn it just to get under the skin of Sean Clifford because SMU was playing Penn State.
Sure.
And so he's like, "Did you go there?" And Rob and Matt Schneidman, all those guys had to jump in. He wears all kinds of different schools. It's a conversation starter, which, by the way, it kind of is.
Yeah,
and
it
works. It was working in that moment.
Yeah.
So today, Virginia, by the way.
Yeah, I've noticed Virginia basketball and your friend who retired, Tony Bennett.
He retired on me. Now I got to sell this on Poshmark.
That's awesome. Jordan Love gets the Toyota endorsement prior to Monday's game against the Saints. Isn't asked to do all that much, right? Like, that's the nice part about when you bring in a guy like Josh Jacobs. Let him carry the rock, let him open things up. I think he was 16 of 28, threw for less than 200 yards, just threw the opening drive touchdown to Dontavian Wicks. But again, no interceptions, no crucial mistakes, no horrible errors. It seems like he's found his groove, and I think that is a huge part in thanks to what the running back has been able to open up for that offense as well. How do you evaluate Jordan Love at this point in the season, Jason? Because it seems like he's cool, calm, collected, like we're used to, but he's minimized the mistakes, he's maximized the touchdowns and some of the nice chunk plays, and he's playing good football.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play great on Monday night, right? He played fine. Let's not start calling him a game manager, though. And I know you're not. But the idea that he is just there to hand off and make the occasional throw is a fallacy. That's how it's been for a few weeks, right? But still, that throw in Detroit where he has to flip his legs and make that throw to Watson, game managers don't do that stuff. They just don't. So, he did not play great. I would say, even one of his biggest plays, by his own admission, the fourth down throw to Tucker Kraft, he missed Watson wide open for a touchdown. And he admitted that. There was another throw where he had Romeo Doubs and didn't see him, right? So he's, newsflash, he's not perfect. But, here's the thing. If a team comes in, whether it's Minnesota on Sunday or someone in the playoffs, and says, blank you, Matt LaFleur, we're not letting Josh Jacobs beat us. You're going to have to beat us with your quarterback. You don't think your quarterback can beat him? I do.
Okay. Fine. Right.
Let's go, right? Let's ride, as Russell Wilson might say. Although not now. I don't know what he says now.
I think he used to say, yeah.
Let's ride. So, look, can they win shootouts that he has to be perfect in or close to perfect? I mean, he had 5 straight games of a 100 passer rating. He was like 81 this week because he didn't do much. But again, I think he's more than capable. If they had to get into 3 shootouts, no, maybe not. But look, the biggest thing to me is he put the ball in harm's way, once on Monday night? Once? When the big, huge defensive lineman guy should have had a pick and his own teammate broke it up. I mean, if he can keep doing that, he's on 5 games in a row now without a pick, 4 games in a row without a pick.
5, yeah.
He is plenty good to get them where they want to go. There's no doubt about it. But they're better if they don't have to ask. If they have to ask him to make 5 big time throws in a game, and that's it, then they're sitting pretty. And if he has to make 10, I think he's capable of making 9 out of the 10 or whatever it might be. But again, this is a guy, and look, I own everything that I've said about him from the very start. He stunk his rookie camp. And you can say it's because of COVID and not having an off season and all that. That's fine. But he wasn't very good in 21 either. And if he was good enough going into the 22 season, Brian Gutekunst would have traded Enigma. He would have, despite back-to-back MVPs. They certainly wouldn't have given Enigma an extension. So he wasn't ready yet. But now The guy that I used to say I don't see enough wild throws from, I see him all the time. I just tried to replicate one in my basement studio. So he is plenty good now. He has to keep avoiding the mistakes. And I think what has reinforced that for him is how many checkdowns have turned into big plays. That when you get the reward of that by just dumping it off instead of taking a blanket Watson or Reed is down there somewhere approach, that's when you buy in further. You don't feel like you have to throw it 60 yards in the air, even though you can, because if you dump it off and Josh Jacobs takes it for 59 and 56 of it is after the catch, that it still looks the same in the stat book.
Yeah, no, you're totally right. And, I think his growth has been evident even this season, right? To some of the points you just made. I don't know if he's doing some of that stuff a year ago. And obviously, his best stretch was when Aaron Jones was running the ball for 100 yards a game there at the end of the season. And now you see that consistently from a guy like Josh Jacobs. And Monday was obviously more of a committee affair, right, with Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks each scoring touchdowns as well and toting the rock quite a bit. But all in all, mistake-free game again. So he's been really impressive to me. On those running backs, Emmanuel Wilson, who we've seen less of in past weeks, and Chris Brooks, who we've seen more of in weeks, also getting into the end zone on Monday. Each of the three running backs scoring touchdowns. I'm not sure how many times that's happened this year in the NFL, on top of the shutout, the only one that's happened this year. Chris Brooks seems like he's taken a lot of Emmanuel Wilson snaps. Now, I think Wilson actually had more with Josh Jacobs taking a seat in the second half on Monday. But Chris Brooks has been a guy who I don't think Packers fans knew who he was at the beginning of the year. And now he's carved out this really neat role, kind of as a fullback, a sixth offensive lineman, good blocker and pass protection. And obviously scores a touchdown Monday. What have you made of Chris Brooks' arrival to Green Bay? Because that's a story that intrigues me.
Yeah, he won everybody over, even though he's not the most outgoing guy. One of the coaches joked that he didn't know if he'd seen him smile yet, which he has now, by the way. Breaking news.
That's great.
But I think he won a lot of guys over with the play. Who were they beating? And he laid down instead of scoring the touchdown.
Houston, Jacksonville, maybe.
Yeah, whatever game that was. The guy had never scored a touchdown in the NFL. And he passed it up because it was the right play.
Yep.
He is, every time I'm in the locker room, he is in his locker sitting on his iPad. When I have tried to interview him, I have been treated as politely treated as an inconvenience and an annoyance. He is all business. And they really, really like him. They love the fact that he sticks his nose in there and blocks no matter who is coming through the gap. They like that he is that serious about his job. Anthony Campanile, the linebackers coach, knew him in Miami and recommended him. They are thrilled with him. He is a really good fit. And look, what I thought was cool about that game was, and I didn't think this was possible, just like I didn't think it was possible for a tight end to contract a shoulder injury when his quarterback broke his collarbone. I didn't think that was contagious, but I found out with Martellus Bennett that it was. I didn't think that physicality translated and spread like a virus to other running backs. But if you watch the way Emmanuel Wilson and Chris Brooks run, they run like Josh Jacobs now. Right? So they know, I did a story on it today, they know that is the standard. They got to run through guys' face masks if they have to, and they have done it. So it has been permeating that group, and they were really excited that all three of them got in the end zone.
Yeah, that's an awesome story, and that was a great line by you. So good nugget there on the three running backs. Treated like a polite annoyance / inconvenience. I hope I've never treated you that way.
You're not that polite.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Actually, I'm really not. So I won't even.
Kind of walked into that.
I did. I won't even argue with that one. I don't know how voting for postseason awards goes, Jason. I have no idea if you have.
I do not have a vote.
Okay.
Tom Silverstein has the Green Bay vote.
Okay, so each market gets a vote then.
There are 50 voters. There is one in each NFL city, so that's or for each team, so that's 32, and then there's 18 at-large voters.
Gotcha. Okay. Interesting. I never knew how that worked. But Sunday is definitely, at least in my mind, and maybe not definitely, but it's a matchup between the two front runners for coach of the year in my mind. I mean, I know you can make a case for a couple other guys, but KOC of Minnesota, you're giving me a bad look. Who am I forgetting about?
Matt LaFleur's not in the conversation at all. He should be, but he's not.
He should be.
Yeah. So you're right. In your mind, you can think that
they're the front runner.
It's the showdown between the two MVP candidates too, Jordan Love and Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold, go right ahead. But I mean, look, Kevin O'Connell is the real deal.
Yeah, he should win that award.
I mean, these guys. I mean, Sam Darnold, right? Sam Darnold. So, he did it with Kirk Cousins, who now, and I understand he has an Achilles tear from last year that factors in here, but like, this guy's a damn good football coach. He's like Matt LaFleur with less handsome eyebrows. Like, he's really good. And so, yeah, that's another cool thing about their story is that yet another Sean McVay branch has borne a lot of fruit as a coach. And so these are two really good coaches. Like, I think if you want to pick on LaFleur and say that he's a little emotional sometimes and he lets you get the best of him, sure. If you want to give him grief for overreacting to the wave or to the knucklehead fan that was on the field in Detroit, although then, I know he said later, subsequently, that he hoped that guy got let back in the building, right? So he didn't want him banned for life. You can say that he tightens up in big games if you want, but he's a really good football coach. Kevin O'Connell is nipping at his heels. Like when we were talking about LaFleur in 19, 20, and 21 about having the best 3-year record since George Seifert. I think he actually surpassed him at one point. Obviously the Vikings last year, after they lose Cousins to the injury, were a train wreck. Packers went in there and spanked him on New Year's Eve because the quarterback that he chose to start was completely overmatched, but he was sick of the other guy turning the ball over 6 times. So they had no real choice. Well, if you give him Kirk Cousins for the rest of the last season, he's probably sitting there with the best 3-year record of any coach in NFL history, right? So again, this is going to be this is another aspect to this. And don't forget that the defensive coordinators are a guy that's been a college head coach that we're talking about as, hey, look out, this guy could be an NFL head coach. Maybe not in this hiring cycle, but at some point, they go to the Super Bowl, he's going to be getting interviews, right?
Yep, agreed.
And the other guy was a head coach, successful as an assistant in New England, maybe some questionable personal skills, but it sounds to me like in Minnesota, they have figured out exactly how to work with him, and it works there. So you got 2 damn good defensive coordinators in addition to your 2 damn good offensive-minded head coaches.
Good point. Yeah, it's a fun coaching matchup. Who am I missing? Dan Quinn from Washington, probably a front runner.
I would think so. I mean, it's either your team is really great.
Yep.
Or your team is very good unexpectedly.
And the Vikings fall into that category, right?
Right. And look, Dan Campbell, his team is 13-2 and has fought through more injuries than anybody can imagine. So let's not rule out him winning.
He stresses me out. But that's
Mike Tomlin.
Yeah,
Mike Tomlin's probably in that conversation too. So there's plenty of guys that merited. I just don't like the fact that people look at LaFleur and just say, oh, ho-hum.
Right. I feel like it's disrespectful to rule him out because they don't have a playoff spot clinched if he doesn't win essentially 3 games with Malik Willis at quarterback. So anyway, that's a gripe for another day that we can save for when the offseason awards happen. Few minutes left. Give me final thoughts. I know we'll talk about it more Sunday on Green Bay game day, but Packers Vikings, it's a really intriguing matchup. Imagine it's going to be a close game. It's a great challenge for this Green Bay team who's been rolling the last few weeks. What do you make of this one? What do you think we can learn from this one?
Yeah, my biggest issue with it is that it's on a short week with Christmas in it. So like there's so many good storylines. I haven't even talked to anybody yet. Like the game ended Monday night. LaFleur talked at noon on Tuesday, so I was finishing our show. There was no access yesterday. I'm headed to Lambeau after I get done with you here. That'll be the first time I talk to these guys, and then I'm leaving for Minnesota on Friday because I've got roller coasters to watch the girls on. So, like the Aaron Jones angle, Aaron Jones has had a really good freaking year. Maybe not as good as Josh Jacobs, but had a really good year. The matchup we talked about the defensive coordinators. Is Jair Alexander finally going to play? Because if there's any game on the schedule that you would think he would be desperate to play in, it would be this one.
Mm-hmm.
So, him against Justin Jefferson, to me, the other storyline is, they have some moving pieces defensively. This is a defense that's going to challenge them. Can they keep up what they have done the last several weeks? The offensive line has played really well. They have gotten their act together. Are they going to be able to hold up against this scheme, right? I mean, if we're being honest, this can be an overwhelming scheme. We have seen it happen to teams. That was not their problem the first time Minnesota played these guys. Their problem was their defense gave up 28 consecutive points, and Jordan Love was a shell of himself coming back from injury. So this is a fantastic game. It probably should be on Sunday Night Football. It's not. It was protected wisely, so we'll see what Tom Brady has to say during the broadcast.
Yeah, it gets a national audience regardless. It's just at 325 rather than 720. And on your note, before we let you go, Jordan Love only sacked 11 times this year. He was sacked 30 last year, right? So the way he's been elusive, but the O-line has been consistently healthy pretty much for most of the season and really impressive. That's Jason Wilde. You can get him on all social media at Jason J. Wilde. You can read him in the Wisconsin State Journal and hear him weekdays 9 to noon on Wilde and Tausch. I'm Alex Strouf. This is Weekly Wilde. We do it each and every Thursday morning as we try to get through and get smarter about the Packers, which I think we did today, Jason. Good job.
I'm glad I can help.
You do your best. We will talk to you on Green Bay game day ahead of Packers Vikings, the 4 o'clock hour? No, the 1 o'clock hour. Whoa, I'm all thrown off. Is the Jason Wilde hour. So Jason Wilde, 1 o'clock hour. Wow. Holidays got me thrown off. We'll try again next week. It's Weekly Wilde. Bye.